So when we started here, we were very lucky because we have a piece of land that had never been farmed, so it's never had any pesticides or herbicides in the soil. So that was great to start off with. We knew we wanted to do organic from the beginning, and then we looked at, what else do we want to do? Is there something better than organic? And I did some research. I looked into biodynamics, but there are some aspects of biodynamics that are not totally scientifically based.
Right.
And but then I heard about regenerative organic viticulture, and that had a lot to do with keeping the soil healthy, with carbon capture and not tilling the soil, so more carbon stays in the soil, so you can be part of a climate solution rather than a climate problem, which conventional agriculture is a climate problem. And so that all appealed to me, and the basis of it is as somebody who's a science writer, I love the fact that it was really easy to understand and really easy to explain to people. We can just say, look, we've got this place, it's a wonderful ecosystem. What we want to do here is create a very diverse ecosystem, even granted that we're growing a crop, but we have a lot of space in the rows and the alleys and on the borders where we want to have a lot of plants. We want to have a diversity of plants, we have a diversity of insects, we have diversity of birds, mammals, and we want all of that because a diverse ecosystem is a resilient ecosystem, and that really appealed to us.
You want to talk a little bit about the biome and carbon capture and through no-till?
Yeah, so the idea is that in conventional agriculture, you're constantly tilling. You're putting a plow and you're turning up the soil. And every time you do that, you're releasing carbon. Also, you're also destroying the microbiome. You're destroying the community of protists and insects and fungi and microbial life that is all interconnected. And it's a very complex, the microbial ecosystem underground is at least as complex as the ecosystem above ground. So if you're doing regenerative organic farming, what you want to do is you want to have minimal tilling, or preferably no tilling. You want to keep the ground covered because in nature, bare soil is not natural. Nature abhors that. And so you want to make sure that everything that's there, all the niches are filled so that pests can't come in. So there's no place, any destructive insects, there's no place for them because all the niches have been filled by beneficial insects, by a diverse community. And so we want to be part of the climate solution. And by not tilling, we can keep the carbon in the ground. And as plants and leaves and everything in the vineyard, as that decomposes, that goes back into the soil. And what we want to do is increase the carbon in our soil. And we already have a high amount of carbon in our soil, and we want to make it even better. And that's the thing about regenerative. You're trying to make the soil not just sustainable, not just let's keep things the way they are. It's like, can we make the soil better? Can we make this environment better than it was? Mm-hmm. More resilient.
And if you take a step back, just what we're doing here at Ambar, but the why we're doing it at Ambar, more importantly, why other people as well are approaching farming differently now, by which I mean adopting standards like regenerative organic, is that the world has gone to a point where industrial farming and the use of pesticides and herbicides and large-scale tilling of the land has had a very demonstrably negative effect on the environment, on human health, and on people who work in the fields at sites that produce these crops. So Pam talked about the importance to the soil health, and the ecosystem. There's also an important factor of the human impact of all these things, and in particular, the direct impact on people who work in the fields and are exposed to pesticides and herbicides. Give you an example, our son-in-law worked as a viticulturist this summer, and his employer told them that they should come home every day after they've worked in a vineyard and take their clothes off, put them in the washer, take a shower before they do anything else, because even here in the Willamette Valley, which generally is a responsible area in terms of farming and in the wine community, there's such an extensive use of pesticides and herbicides that it's dangerous for them if they don't actually make sure they've gotten rid of all those pesticides and herbicides. We invite guests to come and sit in our vineyard and enjoy our wine and enjoy the experience here. we wouldn't feel comfortable doing that. We wouldn't feel comfortable living here. We wouldn't feel comfortable inviting guests here if we weren't farming in a regenerative way and know that we're not using any harmful pesticides and chemicals here. So it's the human health, and then even take a step back, it's really global health. It's really protecting the soils of the planet, producing food, producing wine, producing any agricultural products in a responsible way, so that future generations as well will have land and opportunity to be able to carry on the very important job of farming and providing food and beverages and food products to their larger community.
Yeah, we would like to think that somebody, a farm worker on our land, can maybe work here all day and go home, and maybe they're, dusty and dirty and sweaty, but their child runs up to them and they can hug their child. They don't have to worry because they've got, oh God, I've got to take off my clothes because I might have pesticides. I don't want to get my kids sick. We feel strongly that the social equity part is the social equity pillar of Regenerative Organic is really important, and that also includes things like paying a living wage. We actually pay more to our farm workers than is standard, and also just health and safety. The ROC part of the certification process, making sure that people have they have health care, making sure that they know that if there's any problems that they can actually go to somebody and complain if there's a health or safety issue on the vineyard, that they can actually report that and not be retaliated against. So we support all that. The other pillar of Regenerative Organic is animal welfare, and it doesn't apply too much to us because we don't have any, we're not raising any animals for food or anything, but we do have sheep in the vineyard in the winter. So our management company brings in sheep, and that's part of ROC, is instead of doing tractor passes, so every time you take a tractor out, you're compressing the soil, and you don't want to compress the soil, so you want to minimize the tractor passes as much as possible to keep your soil healthy. So in the winter, we bring in sheep, and they mow down the cover crop for us and provide us with free fertilizer, and they're adorable. So we're really happy when the sheep come in. I think people like to see the sheep too, and that's part of the responsibility of our vineyard management company.
And I guess, let me just add one last final thing, then we can move on to other things if you'd like, which is we recognize we're small farmers. We have 15 acres of planted vines here. We have another 40 acres of planted vines up the road where the Vinovate facility is. We're doing that Regenerative Organic as well, and we'll get certified in time. But we're small. We're not large enough ourselves to make a major difference in some of those outcomes I described earlier. So we're hopeful, and we're committed to trying to be a good example as good stewards of the land, and really kind of help build a community here, and ultimately, ideally, a movement around making Oregon, the Willamette Valley, this area known for responsible farming, be it organic, be it biodynamic, and ideally, in our minds, regenerative organic is the right outcome. But most importantly, kind of helping people move past those old practices of the use of pesticides, the use of herbicides, the use of tilling, as I described before, and really have this community become known for and proud of the fact that they're on the vanguard of doing that.
Part of Regenerative Organic is, as I mentioned, is trying to create a whole vibrant, diverse ecosystem. So, and we want natural predator control. So we have raptor perches, we have a kestrel box, we have an owl box to encourage natural predation. There's a couple places along the fence where the bottom of the fence has kind of been, there's places dug out, and coyotes come in. That's great. Come on in. Enjoy our 100% organic bulls. And I also we want to do some more along those lines. We have some areas along fences. We have an area in the back that's completely wild, and we have an area along the fence in the back. So we want to do some native plant restoration. One of my other projects is I'm talking about birds. So we have what's called, birders would call a house list of how many species of birds you've seen on a particular property. So I'm up to, I think, 49 species here at Ambar. And one of my future projects is I'd like to install some bluebird boxes because Western bluebirds have been declining, and one of the ways you can help them out is by putting nesting boxes. And they love vineyards because there's lots of bugs, and it's very, it's they like the sort of more clear area there, and it's ideal habitat for them. So I'm going to try to attract some more bluebirds.
And an irony we've discovered is Pam mentioned our desire to plant native flora and help bring back and restore and have here in our biosystem native flora. We've learned the hard way that it's more expensive to promote and grow native flora than it is to do exotic species. And this is my shout out to people who are listening who may control research dollars or other such things, which is, I think there's room for some investment and support to really help make it more accessible for everyone to be able to source, plant, and nurture native flora, because it's not as easy as intuitively you might think.
Yeah, I had this notion that you just like spread seeds and it'll all come bouncing back, but not really. No, you have to put in established plants, and then you have to weed because of blackberries. The blackberries are invasive. They're like the vine that ate the Northwest, and so there's a lot. So you have to keep whacking back the black. It's
but the
it's
source
more of a
is
struggle. It's more of a struggle.
But in the plant material is
is
harder
not
to find and more expensive.
Yeah.
So my professional career really had two different elements to it. One is the practice of law. I was a corporate lawyer for 35 years for a large law firm called Morrison & Foerster, and then the later part of my career was more as an investor in technology companies. In my legal career, I spent a lot of time doing two things that overlaps. One is working with clients in the wine industry. So in the state of California, Napa Valley, Sonoma Valley, I represented both a number of foreign investors coming in to invest in wine properties there, and also very large California indigenous wine companies. And at one point in time, I felt like I had sold just about every major California winery to Constellation Brands as they were busy gobbling up properties in the early part of the century. I also had the wonderful experience of representing the Christian Brothers, which is a religious organization that runs the De La Salle Institute schools, and worked with a famous, legendary winemaker, wine industry participant in Brother Timothy, who ran the wine properties for the Christian Brothers and helped them sell their winery and brandy properties so they could diversify their investments and support the De La Salle Institutes and the schools they run, including St. Mary's in California. So a lot of fun adventures and a lot of great experiences doing that. But the other thing I did is I did a lot of pro bono. So I worked with organizations, and pro bono, for people who don't know, means providing legal services without charge to either indigenous individuals, people who can't afford to pay for legal services, or for worthy organizations. And a lot of my work was focused on conservation, working with the Nature Conservancy in particular to do a number of things related to sustainability. And then in my later part of my career with SoftBank, tried very hard to make sure that investments that we were making in the tech and other sectors really had taken into consideration sustainability and holistic aspects that would make the investment rewarding not only short-term but also long-term for participants.
And for me, I originally started out in public health. That's my academic background. But for about the last 25 years, I've been a science writer, mostly specialized in writing for young people. And ironically, I always sort of avoided the subject of botany. I always like animal behavior. But since we've gotten the vineyard, I've gotten much more into botany. I've gotten much more into learning and writing about the interactions between the living world and the non-living world. And so my two parts of this is I'm really interested in the viticulture, the front end, the very front end of this process, and I'm interested in the very back end. I'm interested in how we explain what we're doing to people, and hopefully educating people, because we're in a really unique place here, because we're really the only agricultural product where people come exactly to the place where the product is being grown, and they want to know about how you're growing it. They want to know about the vineyard and what you're doing and how you're farming. And so we have, even though we're not producing a product that, keeping people alive, it's a luxury product, but we are in this unique place where we have an audience of people who maybe don't know much about farming, don't know much about agriculture. Like I didn't before we started this, I looked at, bare dirt fields and went, oh, farming, and now I know, like, look at bare dirt fields, I go, oof. And, it's a unique opportunity to tell people what we're doing and why how their food is being grown is important on number of levels for health and for their health, for the health of the farm workers. And that's really a unique opportunity.
The irony is between the two of us in terms of how this has evolved, as you heard Pam say, she's a science writer, and I was always the farmer. I was the family farmer, so I've, for decades,
The
had,
gardener.
The
You're the gardener.
Well, it was
Not really
small,
the family
small
farmer.
scale,
Talking like
small scale
kitchen-
farming.
kitchen-
No, I had several raised beds and things, but anyways,
Kitchen garden.
I was doing truly organic farming in our own backyard, and Pam was the scientist. Well, the way things have evolved, as you heard Pam say, she's become more invested in the viticulture side, and I'm the one who's going to UC Davis Enology Winemaker Program to learn chemistry and the science of winemaking because of curiosity, because of personal interest, but also because it's important for us to know not only the viticulture side, but obviously the enology side, and be able to work together with winemakers in crafting what we hope are amazing wines. So.
At least be able to ask really annoying questions. Just enough of that.
Penetrating.
Yeah, penetrating questions. And I'm working on a book for middle grade students. And again, it's not something I ever would have thought about doing until we started this, but I'm working on, it's about how the earth is a living ecosystem. And so I want to talk about how a dead space rock became our haven. And so I'm writing about the origin of life and microbes, and I'm writing about the carbon cycle and the nitrogen cycle and the water cycle. And these are all, ecosystem services that I would not have been as into except that we had done this vineyard. And now that's part of what we're doing is thinking about ecosystem services on our little bitty scale, but it's also really important to think about them on a planetary scale. My aha wine moment was we were living in Japan. Our kids were little. We had another family that we were friends with, another American family. And at Christmas, we figured out that the kids were really good on airplanes, actually, but jet lag was a problem. So we're like, well, where can we go? It doesn't matter how long the flight is, but let's go somewhere fun as long as we're just going south. So we went to Australia, and we had a wonderful Christmas dinner, because it was summer in Australia, on Manly Beach outside of Sydney, and at this lovely restaurant, and we were having, lobster and turkey and everything, and they had all this Shiraz. And I was like, oh, I love this. And that was kind of the aha moment for me. I still really like Syrah. And after that I started, reading the Wine Spectator and just started educating myself and going and buying different kinds of wine and trying it and figuring out what I liked. That was my moment.
I have a couple. As a young person in Fremont, California, growing up there, no need to know Fremont other than it's 40 minutes away from the Napa Valley. And so when we were in high school, friends and I discovered that in the early days of Napa, you could go up to the Napa Valley. You could walk up to the wine bar. In those days, you could even meet celebrities of the wine industry today, like Bob Mondavi, after he just started his Mondavi winery there after having left Charles Krug. And no one bothered to check your ID, and no one asked you to pay them for wine. So we found wine tourism on weekends as high school kids in Fremont. So instead of waiting outside a 7-Eleven begging somebody to buy you beer, we would just go up to the Napa Valley. So that's where I first fell in love with wine for probably all the wrong reasons. And then later in life, I was fortunate to represent Kermit Lynch, who's a leading importer of wines from France, as one of my clients. And I had the pleasure of sitting down and drinking a Coche de Riz that was probably 35 years old, a white Burgundy, one of the finest with Kermit, and it just opened my eyes to the potential of what Chardonnay could be. And so that really influenced me and ultimately Pam as well in terms of our love of white wines, well made. And it's one of the reasons that we planted the vineyard here 50% Chardonnay, because we believe that Oregon has a well-deserved reputation for wonderful Pinot Noirs that are world-class, and we feel strongly that the same can be said over time for Chardonnays grown here if they're grown thoughtfully and the right clones and then the right winemaking style. Whether they'll last 35 years, I hope so. Time will tell. So, as Pam said, it can be a vehicle to educating people about a lot of issues around farming, and in fact social justice as well, that we care deeply about social justice issues like she touched on, making sure that employees are paid a living wage, making sure that we don't use harmful chemicals in the vineyard. But it's also a vessel to really unleash experiences with other people and other parts of the community and really unlock curiosity that people have. It's one of the great things about wine that's different than spirits. Beer shares some of these attributes, which is there's so much variety in terms of types of wines, even the same clones grown in different places of the world and made in different styles produce remarkably different wines. And there's so many different places in the world that make great wines. There's so many different varietals that can be used to make great wines that it's a never-ending quest. You can spend a large part of your life just diving in and exploring your curiosity and then sharing it with other people, sharing those experiences. I was with somebody the other night at an event we did up at the Boundary in Portland to raise money for cystic fibrosis. And he said, so how much of it is it really the uniqueness of the wine and how much is it the uniqueness of the experience in which you're drinking that wine that makes it memorable for you and makes you want to share it with other people? And I thought that question was so revealing of what wine can be, because it's both, of course. It's the uniqueness of the wine, and it becomes even more meaningful to you if you're sharing it in a lovely site like this, sharing it with people you care about, and going home and then sharing that experience with others.
Yeah, I think that's part of what I felt when we were having that Christmas dinner in Sydney. Was just part of it was the wine, but part of it was just this magical moment. We had 5 kids who were out on the beach playing, and the adults, we were sitting on the porch watching them, and it was just it was such a beautiful moment.
Respect for us, it's a pretty encompassing term. I would say we start with respect for the land and the soil, and you've heard kind of our reasons for pursuing regenerative organic farming. It really is ultimately, at the end of the day, respect for the land. And in fact, the Ambar name is a name that connotes respect for the land, in that its origins, in the Elvish language, of course, refers to Mother Earth and the land. So we really wanted to embody that philosophy in all that we do here. But respect is much more encompassing than just the land. For us, it's respect for the people as well. And when we say people, that means our team that works here. It means our customers who are visiting us and respecting them in terms of making sure that we do our best to provide them an amazing experience when they come to visit us, and one that will be memorable and that they will share with friends. And then it's a respect for the broader community as well, because we're not the first people here. Of course, we, as they say, stand on the shoulders of people who were real pioneers here and took real risk in developing wine vineyards and wine industry here. And we hope to play our part in moving, as we described earlier, some of the farming and other practices further to more responsible farming over time. And then authenticity for us, one of the things about authenticity is that's part of our core, and it means walk the talk and really stand behind the propositions that you express as important to you. So, for example, one of the requirements of regenerative organic farming for us in the social justice side was increasing the hourly rate, the hourly wage for our farm workers beyond what our vineyard management company was already paying them. And we happily did that. If somebody tells us that the going rate that the team working here is being paid is not sufficient for a livable wage for them and their family, then we're not paying them enough. That's how we look at it. And the other part of authenticity is there are a lot of vineyards that are managed here and operate in a way that people will say, well, we're really regenerative, we're just not certified, or we're really biodynamic, but we're not certified. There's nothing wrong with that. That's great that they're farming in those ways, but we think for us, authenticity means accepting the kind of standards that have been set by a renowned organization that's based on science, and really kind of agreeing that we will be held accountable.
Yeah,
to
the
that,
transparency.
and that we're responsible for farming in that way.
Yeah.
We think it is a step beyond in terms of your commitment, if you will, to that standard. And then ultimately curiosity. I mean, for us, we are learning every day. As I mentioned, I'm studying at the UC Davis Enology program and learning winemaking and chemistry, which I find fascinating. And we're learning about vineyard management. We're learning about
Native plant restoration.
And, we're trying to do interesting things here. And as you do that, of course, you make mistakes and you learn things from the mistakes you make. So we're on a journey.
Mm-hmm. And we wanted this place to kind of reflect our values and kind of our aesthetic. So the tasting room was designed by Juan Carlos Fernandez of Signum Architecture in Napa. And he got our vision from the beginning. We said we want modern Japanese Pacific Northwest. And he did the first sketches, and we're like, wow. I think the first sketches were like 95% there. We did very little. We made very few changes from his original design. And then we brought in Kurisu-san, and maybe you remember his architectural firm, the full name.
Yeah, it's called Kurisu.
Oh, it's just
Yeah.
Kurisu. Okay. Kurisu-san came, and he's a wonderful landscape architect, and he's done work at the Japanese garden in Portland. And he designed the garden aesthetic here, and did all the landscaping, and brought in a lot of rocks. We have a lot of very large rocks here. And when we first saw it, we gave it to Juan Carlos and said, what do you think, Juan Carlos? Seems like a lot of rocks. He says, yeah, it's a lot of rocks, but trust me, I worked with him before, you'll love it. And we really do love it.
I think the sentence was, get ready for boulders.
Yeah.
He said.
There will be a lot of boulders coming in.
And the work Kurisu-san did here is transformative. That's how I think of it. So far in our experience, people truly enjoy and love, and we were just hoping to create something beautiful that would give people a great experience, and so far that seems to be how people view it, so it's great. The tree would be the
anchors
anchor
everything.
to the entire site. So we come every day and stare at that tree and make sure that it's healthy and doing well. Yeah, and I would just add one thing, which is working with the team. We're fortunate to have a wonderful team here at Ambar. And similarly, at the custom crush facility that we have nearby at Vinovate, we have a wonderful team of people there, and they're all of a different generation than we are. They're all
young.
40s and younger.
Just say young.
And just being able to work with and spend time with people at that stage in their career, and the excitement they have about what we're doing here at Ambar and what we're doing at Vinovate, and the mission that we have behind these is a great part of the fun that I have regularly in interacting with them. It helps keep us young, and helps keep us curious, and helps keep us excited about doing this on an ongoing basis.